So the USX's tension table, we take right here is one for the turn, declaration war in Netherlands, declaration war in Belgium, and offensive option. So that tension table is up to 10. We do what the green colored 7 says, and 7 means they can allocate 1 diplomatic point next turn, the US. So the Allies go up 1 diplomatic point. And we wanted to prevent that in 39, remember? We did, so, but now they get it. Nothing we can do about it. Now, as the British and the French, what I'm interested in is getting these hexes back, because you can see Paris is within 2 hexes now of striking range of the Germans, and that's what you don't want. So I want to see what the best possible way it is I can get rid of these 2 hexes. Now, if I were to go on our attrition table and add up everything I got here, the attrition means you put all your pieces that are adjacent to any enemy pieces, you count up all the factors, and then the total is how much you're on this attrition table. And with the British and the French, we can get up to over 31 factors. If we roll a 1, 2, or 3, we're going to get one of those hexes at least, maybe more. If I roll a 5 or 6, I can't get those hexes. So taking the attrition won't guarantee me these hexes. I'll have to take the offensive. Now the problem with taking an offensive is the British money, they don't have a lot of it. The French, it don't matter. So the British, they can afford to take 1 offensive this year, maybe 2 if they absolutely have to. So let's go for 1. The French and the British will take an offensive option on the Western Front. So they go down 15. There's 10. So he's left with 101. They go down 15. There's 10. Okay, he's left with 80. And he has a 4 and a 4 is an 8. Double to a 16. If I want a 2-to-1 on this hex, I need 32 factors. So I can muster up 7 and 5 is 12 and 5 is 17. Now all my airplanes are in range of this, and I can move mine now anywhere I want. So even if they weren't in range, I can move them, get them in range in here. His planes, he moved them out of counter air range. So as he should. So I have free air range. So at 17, if I throw 10 on there, that's 27. If I throw another 5, that's 32. So it takes 15 aircraft. And just for a side note, you can never put 3 times the amount more aircraft than you have units involved in a battle. Okay? So just to remember that. But anyways, 15 aircraft on that gives me 32 on that hex. That would leave me this hex. I can probably have to take a 1-to-1 on that. And I think it's worth it to go for a 1-to-1. So if I were to shift this to here, now you're moving in a zone of control, so it costs 3 movement points to move from one zone of control hex to another. So it takes the entire movement point for this French to go here, this French to go here, this can't get up to there because it costs 1 to go into the zone of control, but to move from a zone of control to another zone of control hex or to leave that zone of control hex costs 3, and they don't have that movement. So I would have 2, 4, 6, and I need 2 aircraft for a 1-to-1 on that. Tell you what, we're going to use French air in case they lose. The British can't be affording to lose that aircraft. So the French air, we will fly 2 over to there. That's a 1-to-1. However, if we get an exchange, I have to take everything off, but I want to leave some infantry up here so he can't walk around me. So we're going to give him some exchange bait. In other words, I'll take more aircraft off if I have to, instead of the infantry. Let's do the rolls. 2-1 first. And it's a 6. That's a clean kill. Planes fly home. Inverted. And 2 German tanks destroyed. And we will occupy. Now I plan on building the British and bringing them back in, so that'll be a good spot for that. Because you can't SR next to enemy troops, so we have to fill that right now. So we'll fill that. And then let's take a 1-to-1 on that hex. And that's an exchange. So if I take off, he loses his 8. He loses his 4, doubled on defense was an 8. I have to, that's a first roll attack exchange, so you have to take off 8 factors. So if I take off this 2 and this 4, and we take off these 5, that's 9. And now I leave that there, and I block that there. So that's how that would look. And now I can SR in the second row here and protect myself. So after that, let's do our builds. Well, the French will spend 2. French will spend 2, 2, 4, 6, and spend 15 on the aircraft. So it's 21. So they've gone 10, 20, 1. British, we're going to try to send in those 2, and we'd like to get another 5-4 on the board. So let's send this in. So the British go 15, 22, so the British will buy that aircraft. Remember, the air wings are important. 15, 22, 25. They're already down to 76. It's only been 1 turn. So you see how the money goes for the British. I don't know if they'll be able to, if they want to spend another offensive option. But remember, they're just trying to keep the French in the game till about fall. And after that, they'll let them go. So that's their builds. And we're going to SR these 2 back in to the French front. We're going to split up the British because they're a little stronger than the French are. We'll put them right there. We're going to SR a French. Okay, to SR that, we use this 9 fleet. And we're going to have to use this 9 fleet. As we're SRing, we ask the Germans, do you wish to intercept that? And the Germans say no, because the Germans are interested in raiders. Oh, and then we put our airplane, the British plane goes there, and we have our double line going again. And we're going to SR this. No, we're going to leave that there. I think for the British and the French, I'm just looking at this spot. This looks pretty weak right there. And the capital looks weak. Like, I think it's time to move these guys. Let's SR this replacement to here. And let's get this tank up to the front line. I think we're gonna, I think we'll do it like this. Why don't we do that? I'm just playing around here. when I SR the British in, I think I'll SR it there. We'll just do this. So we got a good front row and double row. One thing the British have to look for, we're going to spend one more and get this replacement, is now the paratroopers in range to do a lot of damage here. So we put that there in case the paratrooper drops here and tries to SR troops in. And we have this base up here covered. So we're set with the British and the French. They're done. Let's move to the Russians. The Russians will do absolutely nothing. They're going to hold on to their 127 BRPs and they got enough troops on the board, because if something happens with that Russian table, they don't want it to go in the Germans' favor. Let's bring out the German Raiders. They'll come out in four groups. Okay, he'll come out in four groups, 8 ships there, 3 there. The British will stop those two, and they'll use this one to stop that, and this one will break out into the Atlantic. The interceptions, we need 1, 2, or 3s, and you get to add 1 to the dice. So here's the first roll, and he intercepted the first 3. Now the 5, he intercepted the 5, and now the last 3, he missed the last 3. So now this one goes by. These ones missed. They're not inverted. When you miss an interception, you don't get inverted. It's like you've never been used. So that's good. Okay, so now the fleet battles right here. Germans and the British. Die roll modifier is the Germans get a +1, the British -1. So here we go. So the die roll is an 8. +1 for the Germans becomes a 9. You have fleet factors are 3 for the Germans, and you have a 9. The British lose 1 and 1's aborted. Now the British roll, and they have subtract 1. They have 4 minus 1 is a 3, and they have 3, and there's no losses for the Germans. So the Germans win the battle and move on. The British lose 1, so we can turn this into a 4. And 2 go home. Now that battle, the British, or here's the Germans roll. They get to add 1 to us, which is a 7 now, and they have 5 ships. The British lose 1 and abort 1. And the British roll a 2 minus 1's a 1. So again, the Germans, they abort 1 only. So out of this 5, 1 goes home. Okay, so after you break down the ships with your extra ship pieces, we send 1 German ship home, and 4 more continue on their way. Out of the British 6, remember 1 was destroyed, the other one, and 1 was aborted, but they lose the battle and they go home. So we have 5 in there, and there should be 6 dead British now. So there's 6 dead British. That's an allowable build, remember? All these are allowable builds. And out of that 6, 5 go home. So we take the 4 and the 1 and send it home. Okay? That many ships, the entire German Raider group got through. The British can't lose that many BRPs, so they're going to take their 9 fleets that are in the ASW and do what they can with those 9-factor fleets that were in the strategic warfare box and see. So 1-9 fleet will go after this, and 1-9 fleet will go after this. These raiders will get through into the Atlantic. Nothing they can do about it. But let's battle here. The Germans roll. Oh, you have to make the interception die roll still. And it's still a 1, 2, or 3, and you add 1 to the dice. And that one succeeded. The 4 is intercepted. The other ship is they both get intercepted. Here comes the die roll for the Germans. Germans roll a 10 plus 1 is an 11. At a 3, it's 1 British ship is sunk and 2 are aborted. Here is the British roll. With an 11, minus 1 is a 10, but the British have 9 ships. So they use this table, and you see there's more losses on the Germans. The Germans lose 2, and 3 are aborted. So that, out of that 4, the Germans lose 2 of them. So they have 3 in the dead pool. Remember, this allowed 3 have died so far. They're going to lose 2 more. So we're going to put this 4 in and take this out. And the other 2 go home. So this one was stopped. Now, but the British had lost 1. That means 8 remain. So the British had to lose 1. We already put it in. 2 were aborted. So 2 have to return back to here. And 7 remain in the SW box. But remember, in the SW box, they have to be 9-factor fleets to be effective against the submarines. Now, the British will get a chance to put it back up to 9, but right now that 7 does them no good in the SW box in the European board. Now let's do the other battle. The Germans have a 3. So they get 7 plus 1 is an 8. So on the 3 table, you have an 8, and 1 goes home and 1 dies for the British. And the British roll an 11 again, minus 1 is a 10. So the same thing, 2 are sunk. So out of the German 3 here, 2 are sunk. So there's 6 in there. We need to have 8 in there. So there's 5. So to put 8 in there, there's 5 and 3. So there's 8 destroyed fleets for the Germans. And then 1 returned home. Has to, out of the British, they lost another 1. So they have 7 there. So 1 more has to be in the dead pool. So they need 8 in there. And let's see. So let's get an 8 in there. And then 1 was aborted. So this goes back to there. And they're down to another 7 there. 7 go back to the SW box. So that's what the Germans want. They want to keep theirs. So far they're pretty even in losing the ships. There's 8 German dead and 8 British dead. So, but see those 6 raiders, the 3 and 3 that got through. That's 6 BRPs off the British. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's what the Germans want. They want to keep eating that money away. The British won't be able to afford an offensive and get these troops on the board here pretty soon. Now the raiders go home. So before we carry out the SW phase, the British have a chance to bring ships back in and get these back up to a 9. So remember the ships here that failed the interception? They're going to go ahead and bring that to a 9 and bring this back to a 9. So they do have the 2 9s, and in their spring they have 2 ASWs, and the Germans have 1 interceptor, which they don't use because The Allies didn't bring any bombers, so it stays. And they have 3 submarines. So we determined first, how many BRPs can we eliminate? Well, the Germans declare they're using restricted submarine warfare. That's in the Global War Rules in the scenario booklet. That means they can only eliminate 1 BRP. So the maximum BRPs the British are going to lose from the submarines are 3. With that being said, you find the SW ratio table. So right now, you have 2 ASW, a 9 fleet is 3, and that is 4 against 3 subs. So the ratio on that is 4-3 in the British favor. So that means it's a -1 off our die roll. And here's the SW effects die roll table. Now you don't use none of these modifiers because we're in a global war game and you have your own research that you do. So right now, it's a -1 to the German roll. They rolled a 3. If you look on this table, the results are nothing. So they lose nothing to SW this year.
First, the 9-factor fleets take off a submarine for each 9-factor fleet there. So the 9 factors will never die due to submarines. So you eliminate 2 subs for the 2 9-factor fleets. Then any submarines remaining are eliminated on a 1-to-1 ratio with ASW units. So there's 1 submarine left, 1 ASW is eliminated, 1 submarine is eliminated. The British actually save 1 SAW for next year.
So with the 6 BRPs lost by the Raiders, the British lose an SR for every 3 BRPs they lost. So they lost 2 SRs. So instead of having 9 SRs next turn, they only get 7. So the marker we put out is right here. It's a 7. It reminds us that they only have 7 SRs next turn. So that completes the European side. We'll move to the Pacific side. So let's look at the US-Japanese tension table. You can see here for the turn there's 1, and there's another one for the Netherlands got conquered. So the Germans conquered the Netherlands, and you have to add another one to the tension table over here. See right there, +1 if the Axis conquered the Netherlands. So that's where our table is at, up to the 6. When it reaches 8, the next thing that happens is China gets to add 1 Flying Tiger. Now remember, the Japanese in 1940, they're going to continue with their communist conquest here with limited offensives, and they'll always be looking to take this hex in China. And otherwise they just are attrition down here. And then it's 1940, we're going to get ready to start moving troops into Vietnam here when the French fall. And then we start getting our troops ready. And I'll give you an idea of where all the troops should go and how many infantry we should have where as time goes on here. As of right now, that's our eliminated units, or these 3. Remember, they got eliminated from the attrition from China. And then these are our 3 extra 3-3 IFTR units as we got in research. So we're going to declare a limited offensive up here. It costs no money. And it looks like 4, 5, I can get 9 there on that. You got 2 2s, 4 double 2 and 8. I would need 16. I don't really have it. So we're going to attrition down here and limited offensive up there. So I'm going to shift some men around, then I'll be right back. Okay, after further looking at it, we're going to take an attrition against the communists on the 11 table and an attrition against the Chinese on the 21 table, on the nationalist. And then I'm just going to leave the troops here. Everything's covered so they can't get partisans still on the board. And when I build my builds, they're going to go out here in Japan, and I'll shift them out next turn to some places where we want to go. So let's roll first for the communists. And we have a 5, and a 5 does 1 counter. So they have to lose 1. Doesn't matter where they take it off, they're going to get it right back. But that's all we're trying to do is play that game. Let's do the Chinese nationalists. and another 5 on the 21 table. And it's 2 counters. No big deal for them. They'll take off 2. Nobody's losing any hexes, so poor rolling for the Jap. So they're done. Let's build some stuff. We're going to spend 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We're going to spend 15. So there's 10 and 5. Okay, and they're just going to go here in Japan. I'll put them where I got these 9s first of all, because we're probably going to shift some men around. And I think I'm going to SR 232s into China because I want to do a limited offensive next turn. So we'll come right in through the ports, and we'll just put them on the front line here so I can use them anywhere up there, okay? The other infantry will stay under the ships, ready to get SR'd or move next turn. Okay, so the Japanese are done, and we move to the Americans. Now the Americans, remember this would be done at the beginning of the turn, but you know we do one side at a time here. Since I'm working each country, it's easier to keep the board separated, but. We add 10 to Europe's base, is 180. We add 10 to its growth, 180. The American base goes up 10 to 105, and the growth goes up 10 to 105. Okay? So it's 180 here, and 105 there. Now, the Americans
will send the Chinese 5 BRPs. And so we'll take the 105 down to 100. But remember, the Chinese go last in the turn. So the Americans are sending BRPs in the SR phase during their turn, but the Chinese will not receive the BRPs until the SR phase of the Chinese turn. So the Chinese don't actually get the 5 BRPs this turn, because when their turn's over in their SR phase, they'll get the 5, so they won't actually use the 5 BRPs until the following turn.
Now it's the Chinese turn. They're going to be able to do all their builds there. We'll just have the communists do an attrition, and I don't think we really need to attack. That's our attrition. We got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's the 21 table. Let's see how the Chinese roll on the 21 table. And they get a 2. Nice roll. And it gives them 3 counters off the Japanese. Now if I take some where they can build partisans, like this one can go. 1. Now if I remove people here, I can definitely remove 1 there. There's 2. And we don't need you. There's 3. So the Chinese are doing their part against the Japanese. Now let's roll the communists. They're on the 1 table, and they missed. But the communists will rebuild that one. The Chinese will build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 15 minus 6, they go down to 9. That's why we don't spend money on a limited offensive right now. We're going to wait till the Japanese get into the war with the Americans, because then they're really stretched thin, and then that's when the Chinese can really start causing damage to the Japanese over here.
Now we add the 5 BRPs that the Chinese received from the Americans to their total. So they're up to 14 BRPs.
Okay, so the Chinese turn is done, and that is the end of our 1940 spring turn.